All right, today we are jumping headfirst into one of the weirdest, most mysterious verses in the entire Bible. Seriously, it's just one sentence, but it's packed with this wild, apocalyptic imagery that people have been scratching their heads over for like centuries. So let's just get right into it.
So there it is, Revelation 16, verse 12. An angel dumps out a bowl, the massive Euphrates River just dries up, and all of a sudden there's a highway for these mysterious kings from the east. I mean, it's super dramatic, it's cosmic, and it just leaves you thinking, what?
So yeah, what are we supposed to do with that? Is this, a literal prediction about a river in the Middle East someday, or is there something else going on here entirely? Well, to figure it out, we're going to break this verse down by looking at it through two totally different lenses. It's kind of like putting on two different pairs of glasses to see the same thing.
Okay, so our first lens, this one's all about putting on our detective hats. We're going to dig into the original Greek words, think about the historical context, and really try to get inside the head of someone reading this for the first time, way back in the first century. This is what you'd call the historical and lexical approach.
So the first big clue is the word Euphrates. Now, if you're looking through this first lens, it's pretty straightforward. This isn't a symbol. It's the actual Euphrates River. And you got to remember, back then, this river was huge, not just geographically, but politically. It was this massive boundary that often separated Israel from its biggest enemies, like Babylon and Assyria. It was a real, powerful physical barrier. And then there's the action itself, which is super specific. The Greek word they use is exoreno, to dry up. And this isn't talking about a simple drought, okay? The word implies something deliberate, something supernatural. It's like, boom, God himself is stepping in, getting rid of this huge obstacle to clear the way for whatever his plan is. And this idea of God just drying up massive bodies of water, it's not new. If you look back in the Old Testament, it's all over the place. These are like echoes, right? God dries up the Sea of Babylon, and of course, the most famous one, parting the Red Sea for Israel. So from this point of view, Revelation 16:12 just fits right into this well-established pattern of God showing his power over nature to get things done.
Okay, but what if we've been looking at this all wrong? Let's take those historical glasses off for a second and try on a totally different pair. What if the river isn't a river? What if the kings aren't kings? What if none of this is literal and every single part of this verse is actually a deep spiritual metaphor?
This brings us to lens number 2, the symbolic, or Christological reading. And this approach completely flips the script. It says this verse isn't about some future event at all. Instead, it's a beautiful, poetic description of something that's already happened, the work of Jesus on the cross.
Okay, so here's the absolute core of this idea. That great river, the Euphrates, which we saw as a barrier, in this view, it's a symbol for Jesus himself, the living river. And so his life being poured out and dried up on the cross, well, that's the event that removed the biggest barrier of all, the barrier of sin.
And just like our first lens had those historical echoes, this one has what you could call salvation echoes. Suddenly, the parting of the Red Sea isn't just a historical event, it's a picture of the cross parting the sea of judgment. The Jordan River drying up for Joshua, that becomes a foreshadowing of Jesus' death opening the way to eternal life. See the pattern? The big idea here is that God is always making a path for his people. So that leaves one big question. Who are the kings from the east? Well, in this reading, it's not some invading army. It's us. It's the redeemed people of God. I mean, the book of Revelation itself calls believers kings and priests. And why from the east? Because they're rising with Jesus, who's called the Son of Righteousness. And, well, where does the sun rise? In the east. It all clicks together.
Yeah, one of the sources we looked at put it perfectly, and it just captures the whole vibe of this interpretation. It says, the cross turned us from captives into kings, rising like the morning sun. You see, it's not about armies and geography, it's about a total spiritual transformation. That drying up of the river is what makes it possible for captives to become kings. So let's just take a breath for a second. We have two completely different ways of reading the exact same verse. One gives you this world of future prophecy, armies, and divine intervention. The other gives you this incredibly deep spiritual metaphor all centered on the cross. It's amazing, right? Let's actually put them side by side to see it clearly. Okay, let's just run down the list here. With lens 1, the historical view, the Euphrates is a real river. But with lens 2, the symbolic one, it's Jesus. The phrase dried up goes from being a literal act of God clearing a path to being a metaphor for Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. And those kings of the East, they go from being a real military force to being the entire redeemed church. It's two completely different worlds built from the very same words.
And this really gets the whole point of this. The goal here was never to tell you which one of these is the right answer. It's to show you something much more interesting, that meaning isn't always just in the words.
So much of it depends on the framework, the lens that you bring with you when you read.
And that's really the big takeaway, isn't it? This isn't just about some ancient text. It's about how we see, well, everything. The perspective we choose, the lens we decide to look through, it completely changes the story we find. And that's true whether we're looking at a 2,000-year-old verse or just the news headlines from today. So, it kind of leaves you with a question, right? What lens are you looking through?